Hey everyone, this is Edan of LightCycleAstrology.com. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're doing Mantic Monday episode number 5, and we're taking a look at the astrology between August the 7th through August the 13th. And I do apologize, my voice is a little bit groggy today because I've been sanding all this wood in my wood sanding tent, and so I've got a little bit of congestion from that. But today is going to be a good day that kicks off the week ahead, and we'll talk a little bit about the archetypal signatures that are coming through in the week ahead. Before we do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Leave me some comments in the comment section, and you can always go to my website lightcycleastrology.com if you would like to get any more astrological guidance other than what is provided just for free here on the channel with the content. Okay, well, let's dive right in. We got a lot to talk about. We'll go ahead and pull up the real-time clock and take a look at how the week is kicking off with a perfected square between the Sun and Jupiter. So this aspect where we have Jupiter at 14 degrees, that is in the superior position to the Sun. Now, the Sun is actually the faster moving planet and the one applying to Jupiter by square, but Jupiter is in the superior position. So let's talk just briefly a little bit about archetypes, because people always throw this word around, archetype. We're talking about the archetypes, we're dealing with the archetypes. And, you know, it's at first when you get used to this language, it's like, what is an archetype really? And it's kind of a meditation where each person sort of has a feeling or an image about what that could mean for them. When I was first getting used to this language, what I did one day is I simply just asked Alexa in our living room, just something fun we do with the family all the time is with my son, is I try to get him to ask Alexa things, especially the definitions of words, because, you know, sometimes with words, you think you know what it means, but sometimes you look the definition up and it's like, oh, it's not exactly what I thought. So being that this is a Jupiter square Sunday and there is a bit of philosophy in the air, I thought, you know, this is a good time to just get into archetypal definitions, as it were. So going back to the story, it was interesting what comes up when you look at the definition of the word archetype. It's something like original forms. And when you're interested in astrology, you are always looking for these archetypes, right? You're always trying to see them around you, and you listen to content on YouTube, or you learn astrology from particular sources or whatnot. And I think we all do this, where we learn to see the particular things around us. So if we know we're having a Jupiter square Sunday, it's like, okay, we're looking for Jupiter/Sun archetypes, and maybe we'll throw in the energy of like the square in there, you know, and we get those combinations and we think about what that means. We try to see it around us, and if we notice something, if our boss happens to come up and say, hey, I know you were going to go home, but guess what? I need you to do this thing for me, but I'm going to give you some extra money for it. That is a Jupiter square Sun kind of archetype. It's like there's some support potentially from somebody that is a higher authority. Jupiter brings the support or the luck or the benefit, but it's almost like you're forced to do it, or you have to do it, or there's a lot of action that you need to do it. So that's the archetype. But what is the original form just of an archetype when we think about it or meditate on what that could be? The image that I began to form in my mind was something like seeing the astrology work around me. And sometimes there's really stark, you see an example of an aspect or something around you, and it's so concrete or so literal that it almost just sets you back. And I think that that's probably one of the reasons why people fall in love with astrology, is because when we do see something like that, and when it is so stark and just bold right there in your face, like it's winking at you, you know, the universe is saying, I'm working, I'm here, this is real. And when you get that sort of feeling, it encourages you to keep going and learning about these archetypes, these original forms, as it were. And the way that I began to form this concept in my mind is almost like as we go through time, this is my sort of philosophical Jupiter square sun moment that I'm sharing with you. As we go through time, it's like, how do you come back to original forms in these particular combinations of planets or what they represent? I think of it as almost walking into a room that is going to have Jupiter things. And then somehow you're also maybe in a particular room that has Jupiter things with solar things. And it's almost like the chart itself where you're moving through different houses, you know. But in this case, it would be like, okay, you think it's just a regular day and everything looks the same and you're going to do stuff and it's a different day. There's different time involved, but somehow today on Monday, for instance, we're all in a room that is this Jupiter / sun. And let's throw in a little bit of Mars energy there because of the square. And it's like, when you're in that room, you cannot help but to encounter solar / Jupiter kinds of things. So as an astrologer, I think what people try to do, of course, is say, okay, let's make a prediction. This is going to happen. You know, your boss is going to do this, or you're going to get a raise, or some success is going to come, or some kind of combination of Jupiter square sun. You're going to go back to school, or all these things. But I think the real trick is to imagine yourself in that place in time. Or for me, I imagine it as like being in that room. Today, I know I'm going to be in a Jupiter / sun room, and there's a little bit of Mars in there because it's a square. So it's like, I'm only going to be able to find Jupiter / sun types of things, right? If I pick up something in the room, it's likely to be a solar thing or a Jupiter thing. And these are really subtle types of things that happen, and that's where you almost have to keep an eye out for things happening around you and see how maybe they describe those particular quote unquote archetypes of either solar archetype or Jupiter archetype, for instance, for today. So just within keeping in the spirit of Jupiter and the sun, both planets that have to do with knowledge, both planets that have to do with wisdom or education or knowing things or order, I think that it's just apropos to share with you guys what or how I imagine what quote unquote an archetype is. For me, it's like walking into a room where there are those things available. I'm going to encounter the original forms. And if I go a little bit deeper, it's almost like thinking about Platonic solids or meditating on Platonic solids, where, what was I doing? I was sanding a piece of wood, and gosh, I should take a picture of this and share it with you guys. But I was sanding this piece of wood, and it had the most amazing rings where a branch had grown out of this particular section of the tree, and it was tilted like a galaxy, or it looked rather like Saturn with all these rings around it. And me just telling you how cool it was probably doesn't excite you, but when you see it, you would be excited, because I've never seen anything like this. But that is kind of one of these things that is just like, wow, you start to see that you're in the room and there are things like that around you. Those archetypes are coming out or spilling out, and you're encountering them. So just in keeping with the spirit of this Jupiter Sun day, I thought I would break down my concept of what is an original form, this Platonic solid that will show up in nature in places like woods and the branches that are coming around out of a tree stalk or something like that, is all in these Platonic solids, or these Fibonacci ratios or what have you. So sorry, this is kind of a long rant for this particular aspect, but I guess this energy just has me feeling a little philosophical. So Jupiter Sun square can be philosophical. It can also be about encountering some stepping up of success, either small or large. Jupiter Sun square can be about leveling up in a particular amounts of success, either small successful things or large successful things, things like graduations, things like raises, getting a job or promotion, bringing something to completion. But the danger, what are the dangers or the downside of a Jupiter square sun moment? Those could be something like somebody impresses their particular philosophical persuasion on you. And it's not like you have a choice, like you have to sit there and listen to it, or you have to do something because somebody believes in something very strongly and it's like you're forced to do it, or you're being that person that is like, hey, this is what I believe and I believe in it very strongly, in it, in sort of the central organizing belief system that I run on, and because of that you have to now do this or XYZ. So the downside can be that arrogance or hubris or something like that, that is pushing somebody based on a philosophical belief, or we can encounter that with somebody else that, we end up doing something because somebody believes in it very, very strongly. So that is some of the energy that we get with this perfected Jupiter Sun square. Now we get 2 of these a year. We get another one 6 months from now, and that's going to be the closing square. So this is a fortuitous aspect to begin the week, of course, because this opening square between the Sun and Jupiter generally is an omen that says, hey, success is here, or it's on the verge of happening right now, or something big or small successful is probably coming in. There's some form of support, although it might require us to take action that is bold or strong, like that Mars square kind of energy. It might be forced upon us in some way. So that is happening today on August 7th for Monday. Now, if we roll the clock forward, we get to Tuesday, an exalted last quarter moon conjunct Jupiter. So I really find this interesting as well, because the moon is moving through the sign of Taurus, the sign of her exaltation, as she enters the last quarter phase, but she does so in this exalted sign, which is really interesting, and she does so as she sweeps by Jupiter and Uranus. So let's break this down just a little bit. Normally exalted planets, right? The moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus here. So normally this would be a pretty positive thing, although lunar phases are very, very subtle and sometimes go by unnoticed. So we get this last quarter moon. So we're entering this very subtle but intuitive space that says, hey, things are good, things are abundant, we're sort of riding high, there's something lifted up, and it's fortuitous, that contact with the moon has with Jupiter. But we're also looking towards the next thing, we're bringing something to completion, we're subtly looking ahead and leaving something behind, or bringing success to the table now, or harvesting or reaping. Yesterday when I was sanding, I was listening to this ceremony. It was the what was it? It came across my YouTube feed, and it was the Bards, Ovotates, and Druids, or the Order of Bards, Ovotates, and Druids. And they had their Lunasta celebration, and it falls on August the 1st. For a long time now, I have been following the Irish or Celtic celebrations that they have, the cross-quarter celebrations. Anyway, this is the first harvest festival, was on August the 1st, called Lunasta, and I think it's for the god Lu, a Celtic god. Anyway, Lunasta is all about that first reaping of the corn, or the harvest. So this definitely has the feeling of like you're reaping something now, or at the time of the year where there's this natural cycle to begin to cull what you have grown over the summertime and to begin to reap that. And this is saying, hey, there's a good harvest. Last quarter moon, things are ending, but it's exalted, it's lifted up, it's moving by Jupiter. It's a good harvest. So a pretty positive thing for Tuesday, I think, as well. Now, the one caveat that could be a downside for this particular day, let's look at the host of Taurus, since we have both Jupiter, the moon, and Uranus, all guests of Venus, who is the host of Taurus. Venus is not in great condition, and she is beginning to move within 7 or 8 degrees of the sun in retrograde. So the host is retrograde, going backwards, weakened, and getting burnt up. So Venus is moving through within the entire spectrum of the retrograde cycle that she is going through right now. This would be the portion of the retrograde between August the 8th and the Cazimi, which happens the following Sunday. So this week, if people are going to notice difficulties or problems, or people's Venusian archetypal natures get the best of them, it's going to happen at this point, because Venus is getting burnt up severely right now, and she is the host of these 3 planets. So, for instance, if you really feel like you want to do something and what you want to do supersedes and is more important than what other people want to do, you could be acting in ways that bring hubris to the table, or you could be just rubbing people the wrong way, or coming across as sort of self-centered or selfish or something like that. Some Venus in Leo overshot, kind of, I'm more important, I'm more beautiful, what I want matters more, I'm the authority on this or that aesthetically. That kind of overblown Venus getting burnt up, expecting things, desiring things at the cost or detriment of those around them. If that is sort of happening for you, for the energy of the moment, that will signal kind of a little bit of a fall, where exalted planets, this exalted moon, it's riding high, but then there can be a fall from grace, especially as she sweeps by Uranus and brings some kind of surprise. And it's like, surprise, somebody's not happy with you. And then the moon enters Gemini, and you witness that rise and fall of an exalted planet. So you got to be careful of exalted planets, because though we tend to think that they're great, and normally they are, what goes up must come down. And so through hubris or self-centeredness or something like that, vanity is a Venus retrograde getting combusted and hosting planets. So a literal sense of this could be like, you go to somebody's house and they're just acting really selfish or self-centered, and you end up, blurting out something to them, and it's like a shock or surprise. The stuff hits the fan, so to speak. So there are ways in which the hubris is kind of in the air, and we have to watch out for that, I guess you could say. So that is August the 8th for Tuesday. Now, if we roll the clock forward to Wednesday, we are going to get Venus enters combustion and squares Uranus. So pretty much we kind of already described this a little bit with that sort of surprise the hubris has gotten you, or surprise your best behavior, me saying that facetiously, your worst behavior has come to roost, so to speak. So with the moon sweeping by Uranus and Venus entering combustion, again, Wednesday to Sunday of this week signals, if there's a period where when Venus is combust in the sign of Leo, if there's a period where our not so graceful nature takes a hold of us and grabs us, and we are acting self-centered or selfish or more important, or our desires supersede other people, or we're acting in vanity and sort of dominating people around us through that vanity. If that is something that comes up, somebody wants out of a relationship, or somebody people go through a breakup or something like that, but it's with Venus combust, it's like, number one, with that connection to Uranus, it's like a surprise. Like it's a breakup that happens out of nowhere. You had no clue that it was coming. It just gets thrown at you, and all of a sudden, your heart is feeling those broken up feelings, and your heart is shattered. So that could be one example of Venus entering combustion, where somebody just seemingly doesn't care about you, or is so enamored by what they want that you don't enter into the fray of their decision making. Or you could treat somebody like that. Like, what you want is so important to you that you're sort of blinded by the light of it. That's Venus in combustion conjunct the sun in Leo, making that square to Uranus. It's like shocking things that are potentially coming back to us because of our behavior, or we encounter behavior that is somehow shocking, and it has something to do with desire. So we're stepping into that room of Venus banged up. So we're going to get these banged up Venus types of things in the room that we're in, and we're going to get a little bit of chaos from Uranus in there as well. So, and of course the room also has solar things. So you mix all these archetypal combinations, and you get what could happen with these types of archetypes. The breakup analogy, I don't want to scare anybody. People always get worried when Venus is in the mix, because if Venus isn't doing well, it's like the first thing that everybody goes to is like, oh, my relationship is going to fall apart and somebody's going to break up with me. That is just the easy off the top of my head example about what it could be. But, Venus can represent any number of things. Venus can represent cleanliness. So what if we come home and we just all of a sudden blow up on our kids and say, that's it, you have to clean your room, I can't take it anymore, and it's a shock to your kids. That could be another example of Venus just feeling hot and bothered and feeling the surge of authority of that leonine authority just coursing through your veins, and you just can't take it, and you blow up on the kids and be like, you're grounded. I know school's just starting, but that's it, you're grounded, you have to clean up your room. Another way you could see this is, speaking of children, is my son is going back to school. He's starting the 3rd grade. So that's another example of where you're stepping into this Venus room with solar things and Venus things and Uranus things and combust, and all of these archetypal original forms are there. Well, that's a perfect example, is a young child going back to school. And it's like there's the Venusian social dynamic where you're entering a new social environment. There's excitement around it with Uranus there. There's maybe some shocking or surprise things with Uranus around there. I could read this as like he's overwhelmed by the social aspect of it because he's been off all summer and he's been running around the yard. And now it's like, boom, he's hit with this like really, really authoritative solar leonine kind of like, no, you will be social and you will do it now and you will participate in all of that. Maybe it's just too much for him. So that could be a really good example where it's like, oh man, this is, especially for him because he is a Libra sun. So he could be really feeling that social pressure. So social pressure, hubris, important desires that overcome or supersede or overwhelm or blind us, things like that are coming in a little bit with these particular archetypes in the middle of the week here. Now let's roll the clock forward to Thursday, and we are going to get a really, really, really interesting moment. I would say one of the most interesting moments of the entire year is, look at down here, we have Mercury at 15 degrees, and the label here, I'm using GMT time, so like London time, we would have between 1:30 and 4:30. I don't know if that's AM or PM. I forgot to put that in there. Sorry, guys. But anyway, the takeaway here is that by Thursday, for just a few hours, look at this, Mercury is going through 15 degrees of Virgo. Why is that even a thing? It's a thing for me because within ancient astrology, ancient astrologers formulated this mandala where planets are in signs that are considered their homes, or signs that were considered like antithetical to their homes, opposite to their homes, signs where planets were exalted or lifted up and in some kind of high-pitched, fortuitous place, a sign of exaltation, and the opposite of that, a sign of depression where they're like low and they're struggling to rise back up. Well, of course, Mercury is in Virgo, and she, in her feminine nighttime form, in a feminine sign that is one of her temples or her homes, she is in this exalted place in Virgo as well. But ancient astrologers also ascribed Mercury to be exalted specifically within this sign in the 15th degree. So planets all have exaltation signs, and within those signs, they have exaltation degrees. So we are witnessing the one time a year where Mercury not only is exalted through the sign of Virgo, but also travels through for a couple of hours here through the exalted degree, the 15th degree within Virgo. So now, to be honest, I have not noticed myself. I have not noticed planets in exalted degrees as doing anything different than just them being in exalted signs. So you can drop in the comments if you want. If you notice something, drop that in the comments and let me know. But I have not noticed anything like extra special about exalted planets in exalted signs. The moon is exalted in 3 degrees of Taurus, which happens on Monday. So I don't know. I've never noticed anything, but according to ancient astrologers, these places for planets were extra special, these exalted degrees, and we're getting Mercury running through that on August the 10th. It's the one time a year that this happens. But if that wasn't just enough on its own, look at Jupiter over here in Taurus at 14 degrees. Not only do we get Mercury running through the exalted degree of Virgo, but she does so exactly as she forms a trine to Jupiter from Taurus. So again, this trine aspect, trines are said to be of the nature of Jupiter. Jupiter is the contact planet that is in the superior position. A superior trine from Jupiter is about as good as it gets. So when we have Mercury running through the best place for Mercury in the entire zodiac, making contact with a superior trine from Jupiter, it's like, the way I look at this is Mercury is like on top of Mount Everest, right? It's like as good as it gets. There's nowhere better in the zodiac or in the world. There's no better moment of the year for Mercury. This is it. This is the best moment of the year for Mercury. So this could be a moment where somebody gets a winning lottery ticket, and becomes a millionaire like overnight. Now, of course, this isn't going to happen to everybody, but this is definitely has that signature of like something that could potentially be involving material things, money, ideas, the mystical side of Mercury as being like having this connection to medicine. So could this be a time where all of a sudden somebody notices that, maybe they've been struggling with an illness that has long plagued them, and it's like all of a sudden there's this incredible medicine that comes along that they discover and it makes everything better. There could be contacts with medicine, money, ideas, or thoughts. Is there one time a year where we have our best idea of the whole year, or like one of our best ideas? This could be a day like that where your mental acuity is just running so high. Definitely a positive aspect. This really high mountaintop moment for Mercury where Jupiter is bringing some good fortune or benefit to Mercury. So really, really good. Now, if we roll the clock forward to Saturday, we get the balsamic moon coming through. It's happening in the sign of Cancer. So this is it's a really subtle and interesting moment for the lunation cycle this week because, we get the balsamic moon, which is about the extreme end of the cycle. It's like some information is being transmitted from something elder to a new seed. We're about to get a new moon. So the way that I think of this always is if you were to go visit somebody elderly in a hospital and you knew that they were soon to pass away, and there would be this transmission of ideas or expression of energy or knowledge or experience that is now being passed down to somebody that's younger, because we're talking about the moon disseminating what it has gotten out of the lunation cycle. The whole lunation cycle has run through. It's at the very end, and the moon, representing sometimes women or mothers or that feminine, very intuitive, instinctual side of us, is going to transmit something to the next lunation cycle. So that's the subtle energy, is this subtle transition, and happening in this really, really soft and gentle feminine sign like Cancer. This is a day where, you could maybe expect to just have really good conversations with your grandma, or, something like that, or have really good exchanges at home, especially with Mercury exalted here. So there could be communications with the family, with family members, or at home, or with elderly women in your family, or something like that. But there's this really soft and beautiful energy that is trying to transmit to the next lunation cycle that is about to begin a few days later. So very subtle, and watch out for that. Balsamic moons are very magical. They have this otherworldly quality. It's like you're in this out of place kind of Halloween night kind of time. They're kind of dark and mysterious. They have a lot of mystery to them, and sometimes they can be a little bit rebellious, but they're very, very magical. It's very otherworldly kind of light. It's like owl light or something like that, that twilight at night. And happening in a sign like Cancer is really interesting because it brings that soft, beautiful connection to mother, females, birth, children, home, family, women, all of those kind of soft and nurturing places that we have within us is being accessed and trying to transmit something precious to the new cycle ahead. So that is on Saturday. Now, at the end of the week here, we get the Venus Cazimi, which of course is going to be pretty amazing, right? Because we are now midway through the Venus retrograde cycle. And of course, I think everybody wants to get to this part of a retrograde cycle because this is when Venus moves on to the heart of the sun and begins to recover from the retrograde. Now, she's still going retrograde for a while longer, but at least she has made that Cazimi contact and is now moving towards recovery, where the period where she turns retrograde and heads back towards the sun, that's always the period where we get the roughest part of the retrograde cycle, because the Venus is going through that metaphorical like dying phase where she's getting burned up by the sun, and there's some kind of metaphorical death happening where she's moving into the underworld, moving towards death. Now is the time where she is reborn on Sunday, August the 13th. And there is also Venus going Cazimi while being in that close square to Uranus. It's not exact, but it's close enough. So Uranus is going to bring in some kind of unconventional coronation where you have Venus moving, you know, through the sign of Leo, the archetype of the king or the ruler or the leader, and she moves on to the Cazimi heart of the sun moment, and she's vested in the authority or power of the king himself. So it's like a coronation where Venus is reborn, but she's reborn on some kind of high authority. But that contact with Uranus, that square, could be bringing in some kind of unconventional coronation. So my example for this was, if you guys have seen The Crown, which I'm sure a lot of us have, there was it the Duke of Edinburgh, right? The Queen's consort. There were things that he wanted in the coronation where he was saying, you know, she was saying, you have to address me like this and bow to me. And I forget exactly what it was, but he wanted to throw off convention. He wanted to bring in studio cameras and televise the coronation for the first time. And then everybody in the establishment was saying, no, we've never done that. You will not taint the ceremony with these new things that you want to bring in and introduce. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way it will be done. It's very Sun, Venus in Leo, Cazimi moment. It's like, this is the way that it's done. This is the way that the established authority has it being done. So that clarity and power of Venus on the throne of the sun is being met with like the Duke of Edinburgh saying, well, I don't care how it's always been done. Like, I want to bring this thing into the future. I wanted to bring it in line with the times, is what he was saying. So look for particular archetypes that have that Cazimi Venus moment in the sign of Leo that wants to stick with the established authority somehow or another, is finding its authority or power under it. A Venus that says, this is what I want, this is what I desire, this is what I love, this is what I don't like, and I'm sticking with the established systems of that, or I'm establishing foundations for that. But then at the same time, there's like the Duke of Edinburgh coming in and saying, but is what you want really in line with the times or in line with your life, or does that really work? So there's this tension there with Uranus coming in saying, well, let's just bring in cameras and bring this thing up to speed and get it in line with the times. So there is that tension with something being brought into becoming in line with the situation or in line with the times, or bringing it up to date, or bringing it out of a convention that is stuck or in a rut or something like that. That is a pretty tense and powerful moment with the Venus Cazimi, because it has that squared back to Uranus. So a very, very interesting week, I think. That will take us to next Monday, which we'll talk about next Monday. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you guys got something out of this. Sorry, I was a little bit all over the map today with my stories and whatnot, but I don't know. I'm just waking up early with sawdust in my nose, and just excited about a lot of these transits that are coming through. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this, and if you guys notice any of these transits coming through. Let me know if you feel like you resonate with that analogy of being in the particular archetypal room, that original form of the planets as they were thought of as the gods and goddesses or the representations of higher divinities. Let me know what you think about that, and if you resonate with that, if that makes sense to you. And I will see you guys next week on Monday. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.